Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Building Strong Work Plans. Today's workshop is part of our Fund Year 2026 Quarter 4 Continuation and Renewal Training Series. My name is Emily Pratt, and I'm the Training Specialist for AmeriCorps Seniors. I'm also joined by my colleagues Noriva and Diane. Before we get started, we'll go over a few quick housekeeping and access reminders. Use the chat panel to receive resources from the panelists or to share ideas or respond to session activities. Use the Q&A panel to ask questions during the event. Use the raise hand feature if you have technical issues and need assistance. The support team will contact you through the chat. To navigate the presentation slides, use the control feature below the slide. This feature will allow you to go back to a slide that we previously discussed. Once you navigate away from the presentation slides, you can return by clicking on the Sync to Presenter button. You can click on the hyperlinks directly in the PowerPoint to open handouts and resources. We will not be adding attachments in the chat. To view closed captioning and translation options, click on More, then Language and Speech, and then Show Live Captions. This function will allow you to turn on closed captioning, select the language to transcribe in, and translate the slide content. Microsoft Teams does not allow us to upload attachments. Therefore, all session materials, including the slides, handouts, and recording, will be available on the AmeriCorps Seniors Training Hub. Unfortunately, due to technical issues, we weren't able to post today's slides ahead of time, but they will be on the Training Hub within the next 24 hours. We will also post the recording at the same time. In order to see that information, you can click on the plus button next to the funding opportunities option. And so all information will be available on americorps.gov/seniors-training. To access past recordings, you should expand the menu for the funding opportunities section and then scroll down to the YouTube playlist. There you can click on the 3-line playlist icon to open the full list of past trainings. You can then scroll through the list and choose what session you want to watch. You can also open the training in a pop-up window. Okay, so with all that said, we're ready to get started. Let's jump right into the content for today, which is going to be on building strong work plans. The session is specifically for AmeriCorps Seniors Quarter 4 Continuation and Renewal Opportunity grantees who are applying for the Senior Companion, Foster Grandparent, and Seaman Demonstration programs. Our goal today is to walk you through how to build strong work plans. And then while you aren't required to revise your work plans during continuation, we highly recommend that you look them over and make sure to reflect any volunteer service plans you have for the upcoming grant year. As you're building your work plans, you'll want to have your program's Appendix B handy, and this can be found on the AmeriCorps Seniors Training Hub in the Grantee Resources section. Okay, so today we'll take a tour of Appendix B. We're going to go over how to build solid work plans, including general information for everyone and program-specific information. We're going to test your knowledge with a recap and knowledge check, and then we're going to have time for live questions. Okay, before we get started, we would like to get a little bit of information from you about your experience level. So let me pull up that poll now. Okay, the poll should have just popped up for you, and take a second to respond. Thank you guys for sharing. We're gonna jump right in and start our information off with a tour of Appendix B. So I'm gonna send it to Noriba to share with us.
Great. Let me take you on a tour of Appendix B.
Noriba, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Thank you. First, we want to highlight a change in Appendix B. We added a new section entitled Meeting the Unduplicated Volunteer or Volunteer Service Year Requirement across the 3-year grant period. The title of the section as it appears in Appendix B will depend on your program. This section explains the expectations for meeting requirements based on your baseline funding over 3-year grant period. This expectations aren't new. We're just making sure they are clear and consistent. Please refer to the February Grantee Technical Assistance Call on Training Hub for more information. The link to Appendix B are on this slide. You may want to pull your Appendix B up to refer to it as we go through this presentation. Appendix B is your go-to resource for building your work plans. It will include the work plan requirements, details about the focus areas, notes, the list of outputs and outcomes, pairing, also known as selection rules, definitions, and data collection, and service activities. Our work, excuse me, just click on something. Our work is grouped into 6 primary focus areas: disaster services, economic opportunities, education, environmental, stewardship, healthy futures, and veterans and military families. Grantees select one of these to be their primary focus area for their grant, depending on their AmeriCorps Seniors program. You can have work plans that fall under the other focus areas depending on what is available to your program, but you only have one primary focus area. Please note that we also have capacity building and other community priorities, which cannot be chosen as your primary focus area. However, you may still select these areas for your work plans on what program your grant is with, depending on what program your grant is with. For foster grandparent program, your primary focus area must be education. Remember, per the regulations, a child in the foster grandparent program is an individual who is less than 21 years old. This means your foster grandparent can work with college students and other young adults post-high school. Once you've met your cost per VSY requirement and placed one VSY for every $9,000 in federal funding and an outcome-based work plan in the education focused area, you can place additional VSYs in the economic opportunities, healthy futures, or other community priorities. For economic opportunities, maybe your foster grandparents can help with job search, include interviews or resume prep, or maybe they can help students who dropped out of high school earn their GED. Healthy futures, your foster grandparent could teach healthy behaviors, such as about eating healthy or getting exercise. Maybe they address food insecurity through a food pantry or help students get access to food. Maybe they refer students to medical care or health resources. Finally, foster grandparent program grantees can pick other community priorities, for instances, where they can collect outcomes or the service doesn't otherwise fit. Now for the senior program is more limited in what focus area and objectives they can choose from. The primary focus area is healthy futures and specifically aging in place. That's it. You must place one VSY per $9,000 in an outcome-based work plan in this focus area and objective. Once you've met your cost per VSY requirement, Senior Companion Program grantees may also have other community priorities. Senior Demonstration Program grantees should refer to their invitation to apply to see if a specific primary focus area is required. If a specific one is not required, Senior Demonstration Program grantees choose a primary focus area from the list of 6 main AmeriCorps focus areas. Senior Demonstration Program grantees may also have work plans under capacity building, which counts as an outcome-based work plan. You can't use capacity building as your primary focus area, however. Senior Demonstration Program grantees can also place volunteers in other community priorities. For each focus area, there is a notes section that provides an overview of what the performance measures are measuring, what impact we are looking for. It explains who carries out the activities and who is counted in the outputs and outcomes, also known as measures. There may also be key information related to the focus areas as applicable. For each focus area, there are a set of selection rules which tell you which things go together. The selection rule map the objectives, output, outcomes, and service activity for each focus area. When building your work plans, you'll pick one element from each column in the same row. Let's talk through how to use the selection rules table. We're going to look at an example from economic opportunity, which may not be available to your program. However, you use the selection rules tables the same way, no matter what focus area you're looking at. For example, you could start with the objective, which is the first column. Say you want to tackle housing. You'll decide what your output is. Do you want to focus on individuals served or housing units? Let's say it's housing units, or O4. Looking at the row for O4, your only outcome is O20. So that's easy. Looking at service activities next, you can choose from 2, either unit development or unit repair. We'll pick unit repair because that fits what we want to do. So as you can see, you have one option from each column in the same row. You don't always have to start with the objective. You could also start with the outcome or the service activity. Say you have a job training program. There's job training in the service activity column, and we'll follow the row across to see the objective, which is employment. The output is O1A. It's your only choice. You have two outcomes to choose from, either O10 or O21. We want to help people get jobs, so we'll choose O10. So as you can see, we have one option from each column in the same row. The definitions and data collection section has very helpful information for each output and outcome. It gives you definitions of key terms. For example, what does safe, healthy, affordability housing mean? It also gives you tips on collecting the data, including any required or preferred methods. The list of eligible service activities for each focus area is included in the selection rules. We've gotten many questions over the years about what the service activity category means, and we leave the definition up to you so that you have the flexibility to define the work in the way that makes sense. However, we know that examples can be helpful as people are building their work plans. We've added examples of volunteer activities that could be performed under each service activity category. These are just examples. There may be other work you do that fits within the service activity category. It's still up to you to define the work in your service activities description.
Thanks, Norvina. That was a great quick tour of Appendix B. Now let's look at how you build a solid work plan. We'll be referring back to Appendix B during this part of the workshop, so please have your copy ready. So a work plan is a task plan with the action steps to address a specified community need. In the grant application, work plans form the basis for a proposed project plan. The need the volunteers will address, what they will do to address the need, and what their service should accomplish. And so how do work plans differ from the application narratives? Work plans are more detailed than the narratives because each work plan will be focused on and provide specifics related to a single aspect of the project. Each work plan will describe one service activity to address a specific need, where the narrative section gives general information to provide your overall picture. Applicants may have multiple work plans. Applicants will use the grant application instructions and Appendix B as a guide to the work plans, where the narratives use Section E1 of the notice or your invitation to apply as a guide. So here are the elements of a work plan. Please note that this presentation won't go in order of how you'll complete your work plan in eGrants. Rather, it'll go in order of the steps that I like to go through when I'm trying to build a work plan. You might have a different order that you go through, and that is fine. The information I'm presenting for each component should help you build a solid work plan no matter what order you complete the steps in. So when I'm building a work plan, I start with their description of community need. The rest of the work plan flows from that community need. You have to know what need you're trying to address before you can figure out how you're going to address it. You should describe the need your community is facing and why it's important. Include information about who is being served. Those are your beneficiaries. Talk about what will happen if the need goes unmet and which should link to the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Explain why AmeriCorps Seniors volunteers are effective resources for addressing this need, which should link to the service activity you've chosen. Include the area or specific counties you'll serve in this work plan for context. Use local statistics as much as you can. Please make sure your data are no more than 5 years old. This shows that you're addressing a current or emerging community need. And finally, be concise, clear, and compelling. Use this as an opportunity to succinctly make the case for your work. And so I don't know about you, but I like to see examples to show how what's in Appendix B actually appears in real life and on your application. So knowing that there are a variety of people here from our programs, we developed an example that'll fit under any of the programs, the foster grandparent program, RSVP, the senior companion program, and even the senior demonstration. I'm going to use this example to build out a few sample work plans. I'll focus on the foster grandparent and senior companion programs because the majority of the grantees on this call have one of those two grants. However, any AmeriCorps Seniors grantee can apply the same concepts to your work plans. If you're an unstipended project, you may wish to refer to the Using Narratives and Work Plans to Make Your Case webinar that we held for RSVP competition. It walks through building work plans for unstipended projects. And if you have any questions about them, please don't hesitate to ask. So the sample project I've chosen is one that has an initiative to support grandparents who are raising grandchildren. Take a moment to read through this description of the community need. So this sample isn't perfect. It'll need some adjustments depending on which objectives and performance measures we choose, but it's a good place to start. Description of community need that we just read in mind. Review Appendix B and look for possible connections to your community need. There may be more than one. And if you don't find one right away, don't stop there. Keep looking to see if something else makes sense. And the best part is there are no wrong answers as long as you build a solid case in your work plan that connects the dots clearly. AmeriCorps staff might ask for revisions if the case isn't strong or well laid out. I'll show you throughout this presentation how to connect those dots. So take a moment to look through your program's Appendix B with our sample description of community need in mind. What are some possible focus areas and objectives that might fit for a project that supports grandparents raising grandchildren? And I'll ask if anybody wants to share what they came up with. And you could put it in the chat, what focus area and objective you choose, and whether you're with foster grandparent, senior companion, or senior demonstration programs. You know, it might be a lot to ask to start flipping through those. Education for foster grandparents. Yes, that could be one of them. Are there any focused areas and objectives within education? Because we know with foster grandparents, it will be education. Vernita, aging in place, SCP, yes. K through 12 success, academic performance. These are great. And thank you for participating. Thanks for flipping through your Appendix B. The school readiness, absolutely. So these are all great ideas. Thank you. And you can see there are a lot to choose from, and there's a lot more that we'll have and we will talk through on the next slide. So here are some, you shared some in the chat. Actually, I think you mentioned both of these. So these are some possible goals, focus areas, and objectives for each of our programs from our sample project. These are just a few examples. As we just saw, there are other goals, focus areas, or objectives that do fit. We'll use the ones on this slide to continue building our examples. For the foster grandparent program, We saw a need to help grandparents support their grandchildren's academic success. So we picked K through 12 success. For senior companions, we saw a need to provide peer support and companionship for grandparents raising grandchildren. So we picked aging in place. I will hand the presentation back over to Norvina.
Thanks. Returning to our example, what outputs and outcomes pairing makes sense for the goal? Here's what I came up with. For the foster grandparent program, I chose ED1A number for individuals served, and ED5A, number of students with improved academic performance. For the senior companion program, I chose H4A, number of individuals served, and H9A, number of individuals who report having increased social support or improved capacity for independent living. Again, these are just examples. You might have others. Setting targets for the outputs and outcomes is next up. Your target should be the number of beneficiaries you will reach and the number that will improve during a single 1-year performance period. You'll work towards hitting that target each year, and you'll start over with counting beneficiaries when the new grant year starts. We recommend you set the target based on what you think you'll be able to accomplish during the final year of the performance period. This allows time for starting up a new work plan and recruiting people to participate. Your outcome target should be smaller than your output target. It's not realistic to think that 100% of the beneficiaries will improve. The only exception is outcome O19A and economic opportunity, which measure dollar value of tax returns generated. Refer to the definitions in Appendix B to make sure you are tracking the right beneficiaries. Be realistic. Use your local data as a guide. You can also base it on prior experience or ask community partners for input. Now is a good time to talk about your work plan targets versus your project progress report actuals. Your work plan targets are what you think you'll achieve in a single 1-year project period. You work towards reaching this goal each project year. You won't necessarily know which specific beneficiaries will be served. You may know, for example, that you'll serve 5th grade students, but you may not have the names of those individual students. On the project progress report, you'll report what you actually achieved during the 1-year project period, and that count resets each year. A beneficiary served in the multiple project years can be counted in each project year. You will report each beneficiary under one work plan. Even if they received service under multiple work plans, you should be able to identify specific beneficiaries at this point from your data collection methods. You should count each beneficiary only once. Make sure you and your stations have a good system in place for collecting data so you can count unduplicated beneficiaries. This includes beneficiaries who receive multiple instances of a single service as well as those who receive multiple services. If a beneficiary will receive multiple instances of a service, they should only count once. For example, if a student sees their tutor once a month while school is in session, a mile of trail is treated once. A mile of trail is treated once a month for 4 months, or an older adult gets visit from their senior companion twice a week for a year, you only count that beneficiary once. Per Appendix B, your beneficiary should only be associated with one work plan. So if a person receives help with both companionship and transportation, you will only include them in one work plan. If they receive services from multiple stations, you can only include them in one work plan. You can decide in which work plan you include them. Most importantly, do your best. If you can't get names of individual beneficiaries from stations due to privacy or other reasons, that's okay. It may not be possible for you to see if one individual is receiving multiple services from multiple stations. At the very least, make sure your stations are reporting the unduplicated beneficiaries receiving services at their station. Let's go back to our example. We'll start with the foster grandparent program. Grandparents raising grandchildren might find it challenging to support their grandchildren's academic success, especially as those grandchildren get older. Grandparents may not understand the new teaching methods or materials. They may not know how to teach study skills or support their grandchildren with homework. This is where our foster grandparent program can help. We estimate there are 310 grandchildren being raised by grandparents in a split generation household in our community. In talking with other community partners, we see a need to support students in middle school or grade 5 through 8 who are being raised by grandparents. That's about 102 students for our output target for ED1A. From prior experience, we think that 80% of students our volunteers serve will have improved academic performance. We wish it was 100%, but we know that's not likely. There are so many things going on in these students' lives. We know that our volunteers alone won't be able to improve academic performance for all the children. So our outcome target for ED5A is 80% of 102 students served, or 82% students. This example also illustrates the importance of checking the definitions and data collections of Appendix B to make sure you are tracking the right people in your outputs and outcomes. Since our volunteers will be helping grandparents support their grandchildren's academic success, why are we tracking students? Looking at the definitions and data collection for the education focus area, and knowing we want to see improved academic performance, we'll look up our outcomes of ED5A. We see that students are those reported in ED1A. Then we go look at the definition of ED1A, and we see that individuals are recipients of AmeriCorps supported services related to education. May include students enrolled in grades K through 12, etc. Therefore, our beneficiaries are the students, since they are the ones with the improved academic performance. Let's take our example for the Senior Companion Program. Grandparents raising grandchildren may be especially isolated because their free time may be taken up by their grandchildren, and they may not have a solid peer network. Transportation challenges, either because they can't drive long distances and they live in the remote area, they have mobility or other issues and can't drive. They don't have a driver's license, or they don't have a vehicle or access to public transportation. Make that isolation worse. Our Senior Companion program can help by providing companionship. We estimate there are 250 grandparents raising grandchildren in a split generation household in our community. In talking with our community partners, we see a need to support grandparents with transportation challenges to make them especially isolated. That makes them especially isolated. We think that's about 170 grandparents, which is our target for output H4A. From prior experience, we think that 88% of grandparents our volunteers serve will have increased social support. We wish it was 100%, but we know that's not likely. There are so many things going on in these grandparents' lives. We know that our volunteers alone won't be able to improve their social support completely. So our outcome target for H9A is 88% of the 170 people served, or 150 students. I'll turn it back over to Diane.
Thanks. Okay, so once you have your targets, you also need to determine how you'll collect the data. There are lots of methods. How do you choose one? So the first place to look is Appendix B and the definitions and data collection sections. This will give you tips as well as any requirements. As you're considering the various methods, think about these criteria. Accessibility. Will beneficiaries be able to fill it out? Will the stations be able to use it? Feasibility. Is it realistic to implement? Will you and your stations be able to use the method easily? Standardization. Can you collect the same data from beneficiaries across different stations or sessions for the same outcome measure? And cost. Is there a cost, whether in terms of money or staff time, and can you afford it? What are some ways that you currently collect your output data, or data that shows how many beneficiaries you serve? These data collection methods are also known as the instrument. And if you would put some answers in the chat about how you collect your output data, we can go through them. Yes, getting stations to fill it out is a big one. Surveys, Google Sheets, Excel spreadsheets, Google Docs for sure. So remember that we're talking about your output data, the how many beneficiaries are served. Independent living performance measures, surveys, child assignment and assessment plans. Great. These are great answers. Thank you. Sign-in sheets. So I have some on the slide as well. And you've mentioned a number of others. So remember, your method should always have a way to track unduplicated counts. This is important because it helps you accurately share the impact you're having. You might compare sign-in sheets, call logs, schedules across multiple sessions to see if the same name of participants show up. Maybe you create a master spreadsheet or a database of clients served and know what services they used and when. It's up to you and your stations to determine the method that works for you. So what are some ways that you currently collect your outcome data, or data that shows how the beneficiaries improved because of service? So your outcome data. Would you please put some of your answers in the chat, ways that you're currently collecting your outcome data? This is another, yep, surveys, pre and post questionnaire surveys. That's a great way to assess it. Report cards, absolutely. Assignment plans with survey assessments, these are fantastic. Assignment plans, yes, thank you. These are great answers. We also have some more on the slide, and you have others as well that you shared or others that you're using. Always use what works for your program. The instrument description. So this is where you'll tell us how you'll measure your output and your outcome. Include a brief description of who will collect the data, what they'll collect, and how they'll collect it. This shows us, your organization, your volunteers, and your stations that you have a plan to collect what is needed for each work plan. So here are some sample instrument descriptions for outputs. They are brief, but they are full of information. They show you have a plan to collect what is needed, when, and by whom. And you can share these with your staff and with your stations so that everyone understands their role in this and what will happen. Here are some sample instrument descriptions for outcomes. So these are a little longer, but they're not too long. They contain the basic measurement for the outcomes. The next piece of the work plan is choosing the service activity. So look at the selection rules for the outcome that you chose. What makes the most sense? What will the volunteers do? Where does their service fit? You can also think about what your volunteers want to do or like to do. Are there certain activities that will resonate with them and match with what they want to do? So we provide service activity categories, and these are broad and not defined. We do have some examples in Appendix B of the type of work that might fit under the categories, but those are just examples. There are many more things that can fit. It's up to you to define what that category means in your service activity description. So going back to our example, here are the service activity categories that we chose based on the goal that we had. For foster grandparents program, we chose family involvement because we saw a need to get the grandparents actively engaged in their grandchildren's success. For senior companion, we chose companionship because we want to provide that peer support to grandparents who are raising grandchildren. I believe, going back to you, Norvina.
Thanks, Diane. The service activity description should explain what the AmeriCorps senior volunteers are doing in a way that shows how they will achieve the outcomes and address the need. Be brief, but be specific. Again, it's up to you to define the service activity and how it connects back to the community need. State who the beneficiaries are and what the volunteers will be doing with the beneficiaries. State how often volunteers will provide the service and how long. Will they serve for 2 hours a day, 3 days a week? Will they serve 4 hours a month on the last Saturday of each month? Will they serve 5 hours a week in February, March, and April? Provide detail to demonstrate that the amount of service is realistic to achieve the outcomes. State where the service will take place, in the park or garden, at a school or senior center, virtually or in person, somewhere else. Including this information in your service activity descriptions helps you and us understand the scope of the service, and it turns the work plan into something you can share with stations so that everyone understands what will be happening, when, and where. Here is the activity description for our sample foster grandparent program project. We can see who the volunteers will serve, how often they will meet and when, what they'll be doing, and where they'll be meeting. Let's see another example, and don't worry if you don't get a chance to read the whole thing. It's included in the sample work plan on the Training Hub. I'll turn it back over to Diana.
Thanks, Norvina. Okay. So here's the activity description for our sample senior companion program project. These descriptions do not have to be very long. You just need to specify the who, what, when, and where. Again, this description is included in the sample work plans in the Training Hub. Looks like we might have mixed our names a bit. Norvina, I can read this next.
Just keep going, I think.
All right, I'll read this next one, Norvina. Okay, so let's look at how you allocate your unduplicated volunteers, and for most of you, your VSYs across the work plans. If your work plan is similar to something you've done in the past, use your prior experience to inform how many you'll need, or check with community partners to see if they can help you estimate. You should also refer back to the output target and service activity description to get a sense for how many volunteers or hours you'll need. For unstipended senior demonstration program grantees who track unduplicated volunteers for each work plan, you may have some unduplicated volunteers, meaning those who are assigned to this work plan as their primary service, and other volunteers who only work occasionally on this work plan.
Dan, is it my turn?
Yes, thanks, Norvina.
Thanks. Pamela Neves, one of our ORO staff members, came up with this great graphic to show the difference between VSYs and unduplicated volunteers for the stipended programs. This does not apply to RSVP or unstipended senior demonstration program grants. Due to limitations with e-grants, we have been unable to have a field labeled for VSYs in work plans. So in the work plan in e-grants, stipended programs report VSYs in the unduplicated volunteers field. Stipended programs report the number of individuals in the total volunteer field. One way to determine how many volunteers or VSYs you need is to figure out how much service each person gets. For our foster grandparent example, we know we have 102 students, and each student gets 2 hours a week during the school year and 2 hours every other week in the summer. That's about 92 hours per student. 92 hours times 102 students is 9,384 hours. Divide that by 1,044, or the number of hours in a VSY, and we have 9 VSYs. Based on what we know of our volunteers and how much they want to serve, we have 7 individual volunteers who will serve these 9 VSYs. For our Senior Companion Program example, we have 170 grandparents who will receive 6 hours of companionship per week each year. That's 312 hours per client, or a total of 53,040 hours of service. Divide that by 1,044, the number of hours in a VSY, and you get 51 VSYs. Based on what we know of our volunteers and how much they want to serve, we'll have 60 individual volunteers serving those 51 VSYs. You may have another way to figure out how many volunteers or VSYs you need, and that's okay. Use the method that works for you. We often ask if volunteers can serve in more than one work plan. The answer is yes. In stipended programs, you include the hours as VSYs in the unduplicated field, using whole numbers only. The individual volunteers are included in the total volunteers field. For unstipended programs, you include them as an unduplicated volunteer only once in the work plan, where they will make the most impact. Include them in the total volunteers in the other work plans as appropriate. Here's how you might allocate your VSYs across work plans if you're a stipended program. You can create a chart with your volunteers and the service activities, which is how the work plans are designated in eGrants. You include the number of hours each volunteer will serve in each work plan and divide that by 1,044 to get the number of VSYs. This is just an example. You may have another way you do it. To summarize, Service Activity 1 had 3 VSYs with 3 people contributing. Activity 2 had 2 VSYs with 4 people contributing. And Activity 3 had 2 VSYs with 2 people contributing. eGrants only allow whole numbers, so you may have to round numbers up or down to get the total VSYs you need. Here we have 7 VSYs in our total unduplicated column because of rounding. When our volunteers will be serving closer to 6 VSYs. You could leave it, or you could change service activity number 2 or number 3 to be 1 VSY. Here's how we might allocate volunteers across work plans in an unstipended program. You might track hours for your volunteers, or maybe you track number of times they volunteer, or whatever method you choose. I use an asterisk to indicate the work plan where the volunteer makes the most impact, and I used number of hours served to determine that. You might have another way of determining that, and that's okay. To summarize, we had 2 people for whom Activity 1 was their main service activity, Beth and Oscar. So we count them as unduplicated volunteers for Service Activity 1. But there were 5 total volunteers serving in that work plan, Beth, Michael, Oscar, Sylvia, and Wayne. I summarized the other service activities here using the names of the volunteers for reference, so you can see how to count volunteers in more than one work plan. Each volunteer shows up once in the total unduplicated column, but shows up multiple times in the total volunteer column. Diane?
Thanks, Norvina. All right. Now we have covered all the elements of a work plan and we're ready to finalize our work plan. So that now that we have all the pieces in place, we'll want to read through the whole work plan to make sure that it flows and it's connected. So the first thing is we look at how the whole work plan connects. Does the description of community need include information about the need related to the specific focus area and objectives that you choose? Is there data on the need and the population to be served? Is there information on what you hope to achieve, your outcome, and how you'll achieve it, the service activity? So let's revisit our original description of community need to make sure it flows for each of our programs. We'll start with the foster grandparent program. The foster grandparent program, we chose education and K-12 success. We picked ED1A, the number of individuals served, and ED5A, the number of students with improved academic performance. And our service activity was family involvement. So here's the sample that I shared earlier. Do you see a strong connection between this description of community need and education, K-12 success, students, academic performance, and family involvement? Let's consider the questions from our checklist. So while the description of community need gave a lot of information about our community, it doesn't yet connect very well to our selections for the foster grandparent work plan. So for example, there's no clear connection to education or K-12 success. It just says that children are more likely to fall behind in school, but it doesn't make a strong case for this need. The beneficiaries of our work plans are the students, but the data in the description are all related to the grandparents. And finally, there's no clear connection to academic performance and family involvement, which were our outcome and service activity. So let's rewrite it to make the connections a little more clear. Take a moment to read over the revised description of need for the foster grandparent program. This is included also in the sample work plans on the training hub. So in our revised description, there's a stronger connection between the description of community need and the choices that we made for the foster grandparent work plan. So as shown highlighted in yellow now, you could see the connections to the selected focus area of education and objective of K-12 success. There's information on the specific population to be served, the 102 grandchildren in grades 5 through 8, and there's information connecting the outcome, improved academic success, and how you'll achieve it by supporting grandparent and family involvement. For the senior companion program, we chose the number of individuals served and the number who report increased social support with the service activity of companionship. So let's again go back to our description of community need. Now it's revised. And this is also included in the sample work plans on the training hub. Actually, this one, the original was pretty good already. It focused on the grandparents as the beneficiaries and talked about the health effects on grandparents raising grandchildren. So I tweaked it a little to talk more about the isolation and social support that tie into that companionship that can improve social connectedness. Back to our checklist. So do your targets make sense given the need and the service activity? Do your instrument descriptions explain how you'll measure what you hope to achieve? Does the service activity description demonstrate how volunteers will achieve the outcomes? Do you have enough volunteers or VSYs to carry out this work? And do you have everything included? Remember, you can share these work plans with your staff, stations, and volunteers so that everyone knows what's going on, so that everyone is following the same plan. And then as a last step, give your work plan a final read through. Ask someone who's never read it before to look it over. You can ask family, friends, others in the office. These fresh eyes are helpful. They see if anything's missing or something doesn't fit when they look at the whole. And then enter it into eGrants and you're done. On the training hub, there are 3 completed sample work plans. Based on what we walked through today, while I didn't show you how we built the RSVP or the FGP work plans, we included it in the training hub for reference. We put together all of the elements that we developed for the samples, so you can see what the whole example looks like in one place. To you, Norvina.
Thanks, Diane. Now for some important things to remember. There are several key dates you want to familiarize yourself with. First, applications are due no later than Friday, April 3rd, 2026 by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We highly recommend you start and submit your applications early in case you have questions on the application or need technical support with eGrants. Second, successful applicants will be notified in mid-May. And third, successful applicants will be issued awards in June and will begin their new program and budget period on July 1st. AmeriCorps Senior is offering a series of live technical assistance opportunities for you to learn more about this opportunity. We will be offering 3 more live events, including Q&A session on Tuesday, March 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to pre-submit a question for the upcoming training sessions, there is a link for that on the Training Hub, as well as at the bottom of this slide. We encourage you to do so if possible. Invitations to apply and any resources or trainings related to Q4, Quarter 4, continuations or renewals are posted in the AmeriCorps Seniors Training Hub. Under the Funding Opportunities drop-down menu, you will find links to all relevant materials. These are some resources that are available to you for this process. The resources listed here can all be found on the program-specific pages of AmeriCorps website under Grantee Resources. Fiscal year 2026 Q4 continuation or renewal invitation to apply. This document details key information related to program's description, federal award, eligibility, application, and submission, and application review. We highly suggest you read this document in its entirety first. Appendix A, list of available funding opportunities by state. List grant information including baseline funding and minimum volunteer service years, VSYs, required in outcome-based work plans. Appendix B, National Performance Measure Instructions. Guidance for performance measures selection, output and outcome pairing, and required information for work plan and eGrants. Appendix E, grant application instructions, step-by-step guidance for submitting your application in eGrants. Appendix F, focus areas. This is embedded in your invitation to apply and provides a list of the core priority areas that AmeriCorps focuses on. Appendix G, cost per volunteer service year and grantee share calculators. Calculates minimum number of volunteer service years for the funding request. This is found only in the foster grandparent and senior companion program invitations. Let's take a closer look at Appendix G, cost per volunteer service year calculator. Again, this is applicable to foster grandparent and senior companion programs only. To use the cost per volunteer service year or VSY calculator, enter the amount of funding, which could be your baseline funding, and the number of volunteer service years you have to place will be calculated for you. How much match per grantee share must our programs provide? To determine how much grantee share or match you must provide, you can use this tool to enter the amount of federal funding you will request in the field below. The amount of grantee share and the total project cost will be calculated for you. Grantee share or match is at least 10% of total project cost. In addition to the invitation to apply and appendices, there are several additional resources to help you submit a successful continuation or renewal application. National performance measures curriculum, self-paced e-learning courses providing an overview of performance measurement. Work plan development worksheets. This template is designed to help you plan your performance measures and help to organize how you will fit your performance measures together with the volunteer service activities. The template can be found in the appendix of the grant application instructions. Indirect cost rate agreement instructions. Step-by-step instructions for entering your indirect cost rate agreement, including for the de minimis rate into e-grants, located in section D6B of the invitation. Submitting your application in e-grants. This pre-recorded webinar walks through e-grants, AmeriCorps electronic grant management system, step by step. You can access the recording using the link. Finally, the National Service Hotline provides help with e-grants. You may call 1-800-942-2677 or submit a ticket online. Okay, now for a quick recap, since we've shared a lot of information. Let's do a quick knowledge check. Please put your best guess in the chat. Seeing a lot of B's and C's. The answer is Appendix B. If you said C, you are correct. Appendix B is the best resource to refer to when putting together your work plans. Okay, now for the next question. Do foster grandparent and senior companion program grantees report people or volunteer service years in the unduplicated volunteers field in their work plans? If you said volunteer service years, you are correct. Grantees in the stipend program should report volunteer service years or VSYs in the unduplicated volunteers field in their work plans and PPRs.
All right, thanks, Narvina. We are going to move to the Q&A. We have a little bit of time for that. We haven't actually gotten many questions in the Q&A pod yet, which is great because it means you were focused on the material and not necessarily on getting your questions in. So we appreciate that. Take a moment to put your questions in the Q&A pod if you have them. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Emily to go to the Training Hub and show you where you can find the resources for the funding opportunity.
Thanks, Christine. Give me just a second to pull that up. Okay, so the training hub looks like this, and I think most of you guys have been here before, but I wanted to walk through it a little bit just to make sure you know where the material is from these calls specifically. Okay, so you get there by going to AmeriCorps.gov/seniors-training, and we'll put that in the chat here in just a minute. And then normally, I think you guys mainly are going to this training and technical assistance call to find the information on our calls, which is perfect on a monthly basis. But when we're talking about training around the funding opportunities, it's actually down here in the funding opportunities section. So you're going to click on that plus button to see more information. And if you scroll down here, you're going to see information specific to this funding opportunity. So here is the invitations to apply, as well as all of the appendices and attachments you need for the notice that you're due, or the invitation that you're working on. It also has the list of upcoming sessions right here and the handouts. This is really what I wanted to point out to you. So like we said earlier, our slides are being delayed just a little bit being posted, but they should be up tomorrow. And you'll be able to see them then, and they will be right here in this resources and handouts section. In that same section, we will also post the example work plans that Diane was referencing earlier. So they will be there too. Then if you want to find the videos of past recordings, they're going to be right here. Somebody asked in the chat about a copy of the budget training. It's actually right now the first one that comes up. But after tomorrow, this one will be first and a different one will be there. So you want to look at budget. All you're going to do is click on this 3-line icon, and it's going to pull up this menu for you. You'll be able to scroll through there and find the training you want. So for example, if you wanted to see the tour, you'd click on it right here, and it'll bring the video up for you right away. Okay, you can also right click on those videos and open them in a new tab and have them pop up larger for you. Christine, anything else here I should show?
No, I think that's good, Emily.
Okay, great. Back to you.
Okay. We have a couple questions. First question, work plan changes. Are work plan changes required for foster grandparent continuations? I was confused on this part from something said earlier. So changes are not required to your work plans. We do recommend that you at least review them to make sure they're still applicable to the work your volunteers will be doing, and that you have VSYs in the unduplicated volunteers field. Okay, so again, work plans are not required. Changes to work plans are not required, but we do recommend that you review them, make sure they're still applicable, and especially that you have VSYs in your unduplicated volunteers field. Okay. The next question is about service activities. So what if the service activity is different based on each school's situation or each station's situation? So your work plans and e-grants are based on service activities, okay? So you would create a different work plan for each service activity. So if two schools have the service activity of tutoring, and two different schools have the work plan or the do mentoring, you would create two different work plans for those. Okay. Remember, you can count the VSYs, okay, where people serve. So if you have volunteers who are serving at two schools in that tutoring work plan, and they also spend some time at the other school in mentoring, you would count their tutoring hours in the tutoring work plan and their mentoring hours in the mentoring work plan. Okay, I also have a question about how many work plans are required for each program. You need to have at least one. Okay, you have to have at least one work plan in your application. Okay, and however many more you have is up to you and your program and what the needs are. So again, you need to have at least one work plan. After that, it's up to you. I need to update the number of total volunteers contributing in my continuation grant and my narratives and work plans. I tried to update the explanation in the other section, but it would not let me. Can anyone tell me in the chat why you wouldn't be able to update information in the other narrative in your continuation application? Narratives are closed. Thank you. Christopher, you get a gold star. You are not allowed to update your narratives in your continuation application. Okay? If you are making changes to your work plans, you don't need to tell us anywhere about the changes that you're making. Okay? If you're updating the total volunteers, just update that work plan. Okay? You don't need to explain why you've changed them or what was changed. And yes, that is different from the past. However, we decided with this year with continuations to make them easier on you and on us, okay, by only having you update work plans and the budget. Okay. If you would like, in your description of community need, you can add a sentence about a change you made, and that's fine. You can do that, but you do not need to update the reasoning of why you changed the number of volunteers in your work plans anywhere in your application. Raquel asked about a sample of a work plan. We do have 3 sample work plans that we will be posting with the slides, and those should be up tomorrow. And they basically take the information that Norvina and Diane presented as they were building the work plans, and they put that into one page, so you can see what a completed work plan would look like. So please look for those tomorrow when the slides are posted. Can the wording or backup proof in the explanation be the same or very similar for 2 different work plans if they still answer the questions? Carol, I'm not sure what you mean by wording or backup proof. Can you either in the chat or back in the Q&A pod explain what you mean by that? And while I'm waiting for Carol to give a little bit more context, people are asking about the correct start and end date for the foster grandparent program. And this is also true for the senior companion program. Please refer to section B3 in your invitation to apply. That's B as in boy, then number 3. That will tell you the information that you need. You can also check the grant application instructions, which also has information about your start and end date. Programs looking for summer placements. Do we need a work plan for a summer placement, libraries, etc.? So if your volunteers are serving during the summer, they need to be on, those hours need to be captured in a work plan. So if you have summer placements, okay, you would either create a new work plan for that if it's doing different work or a different service activity, or you can incorporate it into a current work plan if if the information is still applicable. Double check the service activity description, double check the description of community need and the service activity to make sure it applies. Oh, in the narratives work plan, thank you, Carol, for the context. In the narrative with description portion of the work plan, it was mentioned that 2 work plans couldn't have the exact same wording. So what we're asking for, okay, is for you to tailor the description of community need for that specific work plan, okay? It's unlikely if it's the same, if it's different service activities, that the exact same information completely word for word throughout the whole description is exactly the same. Because mentoring, for example, might have different outcomes or different needs than someone doing tutoring. So they could be very similar, okay? But we're asking you to please tailor each community need description to that specific work plan, including the outcomes, outputs, population served, and the data backing it up. All right. So did I understand you to say that we only need to update work plans in the budget? Narratives are not to be changed or edited. So please refer to your invitation to apply and what kind of application you are submitting. If you are submitting a continuation application, you update the work plans and the budget. You do not touch your executive summary in any way, shape, or form, nor can you because it's locked. So if you update your budget and you have more or less grantee share than you did in the past, that's fine. Your executive summary stays the same. So continuations only update work plans and the budget. If you are a renewal applicant, so you're starting a new 3-year period, you update your entire application. And please make sure you pay attention to the invitation to apply because the criteria questions have changed. So you update all your narratives, your executive summary, your work plans, and your budget. So if you're not sure what you should do, please check Appendix A for which application you're supposed to submit, and then check the appropriate invitation to apply, which is available on in the funding opportunities section on the Training Hub. Sorry, with competition going on, we have multiple places to look for things, and sometimes we get confused. Can you have more than one service activity under performance measures? So your work plans are based on service activities, okay? So if you have one objective that has 2 different service activities, please only select one service activity per objective, because what we learned is that if you select 2, eGrants will create 2 different work plans when you print them out, but only one work plan in the system. So you're not able to update any of the information. They will look exactly the same. So please only select one service activity per objective. And then once you create that work plan, you can go in and create a new one. And that I thought it would create 2 different ones, but apparently it only creates one. So things you learn about eGrants. All right, Emily, we've got about 5 minutes left, so I am going to turn it back over to you to wrap us up.
Great, thank you. Okay, before we close our session, we'd like to get a little bit of feedback from you guys. So give me just a second and a poll will pop up for you. Okay, it should pop up right now. While you're completing that poll, I'll go over just some final information. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope this session was helpful and will help you provide a great application. And thank you, Noreva and Diane, for sharing with us today. I think it was a lot of great information. As a reminder, presentation slides and the recording will be available tomorrow. So you can go to the AmeriCorps Seniors Training Hub to get that information. And then our final call for this series will be held next Tuesday, March 17th at 2 p.m., where we're going to do a Q&A session. So that'll be your last chance to get your questions answered. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks.